Today's video is Divorce Deception Exposed. Protect yourself from manipulation and costly mistakes. What I mean by that is don't let your ex-spouse manipulate you into believing shit that isn't true. I've said it before and I'll say it again. The person that you are divorcing is not the person that you think. Divorce brings the absolute worst out in people. Make sure you watch to the end because I'm going to tell you something that probably no one else has ever told you about one of the biggest mistakes that you can make in a divorce. Maybe you're one of those couples that both have decided that you want a divorce, and so you're both ready to figure things out amicably and go your separate ways. And if that's the case, you may be able to have a very amicable divorce, and that's good for you. But in most cases, one spouse is way more ahead of the game than the other spouse. They've already got their ducks in a row, they've seen a lawyer, they know what they want to get out of the divorce, and they've generally already started moving on before the other spouse even has a clue of what's going on. These people that have prepared for the divorce are in the perfect position to take advantage of the other person while they're in shock and still trying to process the divorce. These people are desperate for any hint that their spouse maybe isn't really serious about the divorce or there might be a way of fixing it. They analyze every look, gesture, and word that the other person says, looking for some clue that maybe this divorce isn't the end. This type of desperation makes people open to being manipulated, so don't fall for it. Your spouse may tell you that the laws in your area are a specific way and get you to believe certain things, but in reality, it could be a complete lie. I'll give you an example. Let's say that the wife has the career, and so both spouses agree that the husband will be a stay-at-home father. The wife is the one who decides she wants a divorce, so she starts getting her ducks in a row. And she convinces her stay-at-home dad husband that it would be better to put the children in daycare and for him to get a job. And this may seem off. Maybe the mother didn't believe in daycare before, and now all of a sudden she wants the kids in daycare. Maybe she had some really strong feelings about it in the past, and now all of a sudden things have changed. So dad might be a little confused about the change in policy, but he goes along with it and says, so the kids are put in daycare and dad goes and gets a job. So once this is done, the wife then files for divorce. Maybe she goes so far as to tell her husband that in the area that they live in, the wife always gets custody of the children and she always gets the home because she gets custody of the children, and therefore the father needs to move out and find his own place. So we'll say this information happens to be a lie. But by telling this lie, the wife accomplishes two things. What it accomplishes first is that if the father was a stay-at-home dad, chances are he may have gotten more custody of the children because he can show that he provided majority or primary care for the children. So now that he has a job, they both are seeing the children basically equal amounts of time. So he's kind of lost that argument that he should have more custody because he was the primary caregiver. What it also accomplishes is now that the father has a job, she may not have to pay him as much in child support or in spousal support because now he's able to support himself. Whereas before he had the job, or before he had gotten the job and before the divorce, if he had stayed unemployed during the time of the divorce, then chances are he would have received more spousal support because history would have shown that he was traditionally the stay-at-home father and she was the one making the income. So in this example, she completely manipulated him into not only giving up additional custody he may have had, but also giving up the spousal and child support that he may have received. The important thing is to remember that you don't just want to believe everything your spouse is telling you. In the example that I gave, the wife said that the courts in their area generally give more custody to the mother in these situations, and that's not true. Many courts around the country are now committed to trying to keep the children in a relationship with both parents, and so they strive for a 50-50 type custody, unless there's a situation where the parents are going to live farther apart, so it would be harder for them to split custody in that manner, or if there's a situation in the home where there's some type of abuse, be physical abuse or some type of addiction, then they may consider giving more custody to the other parent or full custody to the other parent, just because what's best for the children. The problem is, if you're not the one who planned the divorce, you may not know any of this information. And by not knowing this information, you could end up making a big mistake. Another thing that your spouse may do is try to get you to start paying off some of the marital debt. Now, again, this would be something that they would be doing prior to filing for the divorce. Perhaps they try to talk you into using some of your premarital assets to pay off some of the mortgage or pay off some of the bills that you have, or credit card debt, things of that nature, pay off a home equity loan. But they start to try to talk you into using that money rather than the marital money to pay off this debt. So this accomplishes two things. First of all, what you should know is that in many states, your premarital property continues to be your property after divorce. However, if you use your premarital assets to, say you have some money in the bank from before you were married, and you use that money to make improvements on the family home, well, then you're not entitled during a divorce to recuperating those premarital assets because you used it to make an improvement on the marital home. So at that point, it became a marital asset, not a premarital asset. So by convincing you to use your premarital assets to pay off marital debt, now you're out more money and don't have as much money set aside. So this accomplishes two things. If you're using your premarital assets to pay for marital debt, then that's less money that you're going to have after the divorce. And then since you used it to pay off marital debt, that's less of debt that the two of you are going to have to split and pay off. So now they've not only gotten you to now have less money, but they've put more money in their pocket because now that's less debt that they have to pay toward. This is especially important if you're in an equitable, this is more important if you're in an equitable, right? This is more important if you're in an equitable distribution state and you're the spouse that makes less money. Because in that case, the spouse that makes less money may be required to pay less of the marital debt than the spouse that made more money. So this is a thing I'm sure that no one has ever told you. In some states, if you get an inheritance, whether it's during your marriage or prior to your marriage, if you are given an inheritance, that is not considered marital property. So that money is exclusively yours during and after, during the marriage and then after the divorce. However, if your parents have your spouse listed in their will, and that will is not changed prior to the divorce ending, then your ex-spouse would be entitled to whatever was left to them in your parents' will if your parents were to pass away even after the divorce. So you need to ensure that your parents remove your spouse from their wills immediately, just in case anything were to happen before they get a chance to do that. This actually happened to me. My father had gotten ill, so my brother and I were looking at his will and noticed that not only did he have my ex-husband still in the will, he had my old last name, and he had had several great-grandchildren since the will had last been updated. So we realized that there were things that needed to be changed. So my father revised the will and removed the names of all the spouses of his children from the will. So this is definitely something you want to keep in mind, even if you're writing your own will. It's just a good idea to not include the names of your children's spouses, just in case anything ever were to happen and they were to get a divorce. This way you won't have to worry about updating your will, and you can ensure that your children are the ones who get your inheritance. Thanks so much for watching, and please check out my other video links below.